Your Grace, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you about your new book, Foundations, Preparing the Church in Australia for the Plenary Council and Beyond. Congratulations on your work that you put into it. It's a fine little book. And thank you for this opportunity. Now, a few questions to put to you. The Plenary Council is going to be a major event in the history of the Australian Church. Can you outline, or you do outline in your book, some of the critical problems facing the Church, but could you summarise those for me?
Yes, so the Plenary Council is taking place at a time when the Church is experiencing very significant effects of particularly changes within our culture, within our society. I mean, one of the very evident things has been the very significant loss of faith among Australians over the last decades, but it's become very evident now that large sections of our society have abandoned any idea of faith, any idea of God, and many, of course, came from Christian backgrounds. So we firstly have noticed a significant shift in, if you like, the faith profile of Australians. And of course, connected with that has been the fact that we're finding that a lot of people, of course, no longer are attending church or participating in the life of the Catholic Church. Even those who may still describe themselves as Catholic and consider that they are Catholic, they've lost a sense of a need to participate in the sacramental life of the Church, going to Mass on Sundays and so on. Along with that, we're seeing quite a few changes in our society at the legislative level. And so I think one of the most important ones was the debate around the definition of marriage and the decision that was made to redefine marriage as marriage between any two people rather than between a man and a woman. I think that's had a very profound effect upon our society. And of course, flowing out from that, we've seen numbers of other pieces of legislation, particularly now around the issue of euthanasia or voluntary assisted dying. So many things that were really grounded in our Christian understanding of the nature of human life have now, we're seeing them changed in our society, and people's attitudes and approaches to these issues have changed. So I think having a plenary council now is very timely, because it does give us an opportunity as a church to, if you like, stop, pause, look at what's been going on, realising there have been very significant changes, and then tackle the question of how does the church respond to these changed cultural situations that we find ourselves in.
Can we discuss some of the initiatives that you believe are required to address these challenges? One of the points you make is that it's a spiritual crisis, and the solutions have got to be spiritual solutions, involving, of course, a return to foundations, a return to Christ as the Lord. Can you speak a bit about what you mean by that?
Look, I think you're right, David, in emphasising the importance of the spiritual dimension to these. Sometimes we can see them, if you like, sociologically, or we can see them at just the human level alone, but not understanding that ultimately I believe we're going through a spiritual crisis as a culture, as a society, and therefore the response of the church, I think, initially needs to be at that spiritual level. So it's not just a matter of doing a few things, if you like, or even tinkering with things, but I think we have to go back to basics. That's why I call the book Foundations. I think we have to return to the foundations of our faith and build solid foundations. And those foundations are essentially spiritual. You know, when Jesus came, he said he's come to bring the kingdom of God, and it's a spiritual reality, not a sociological reality. Sure. So I think the starting point needs to be spiritual rather than just seeking to address things, if you like, at a human level.
One of the key battlegrounds is going to be, or is already, life, marriage and the family. Society in general has turned its back on the Christian understanding of these things. Could you outline your plans for responding to these challenges?
Yes, look, it's a vast issue and a great challenge for us. I think as Christians, it's important for us, firstly, to understand clearly not only what we believe, but why we believe what we believe about issues around life, marriage and family. And I always find myself being drawn to the book of Genesis because there we see the intentions of the Creator. There we see the wisdom of God. There we see the plan of God for human life. And we see there described that, marriage is meant to be a union of a man and a woman. It's expressed there very clearly. Marriage is meant to be a source of the generation of life. These elements are very clearly expressed in the book of Genesis. There is also, of course, this very important point is that God is the creator of life. So the source of life is God himself. And so for a Christian, going to the book of Genesis, the very beginnings of the scriptures, I think is very important because it reminds us this is the intention of God in the creation of human beings. And from that flows and has flowed the teachings of the church that come from the Old Testament through the teachings of Christ. He's very clear about, for instance, the indissolubility of marriage. He himself quotes the book of Genesis, so the Lord himself builds on the teaching that's found in the book of Genesis. And then the teaching of the church has always had that as its foundation. I think as we look at the challenges we face, I think returning to the sources, returning to the foundations of our faith, and particularly understanding that this is the wisdom of God for human life. And we can do no better than to return and promote the wisdom of God. And I think in the end, it is the source of the fruitfulness of human life, the ability to find happiness, and really it becomes the basis for true human flourishing here on earth, apart from all that being a path to eternal life. But I think I often say it's God's good plan for human life. And I think one of the things the church can do, not only in presenting to its own members, reminding the people of faith that this is how we understand the nature of life, of marriage, of family. But it's also something very important we need to help our society, if you like, rediscover and reappreciate.
It's almost true to say that the default position among young people particularly, and certainly in the West, is atheism. We see it everywhere. We see the assumptions there, even among people who would call themselves Christian. How do we recalibrate their thinking? How do we get them to see things differently?
I have a very simple belief, and it's captured, I think, very well by the famous line from St. Augustine, but, we are made for union with God.
Yes.
And human life doesn't make sense. And indeed, human life won't find its true path without being related to God, without having faith in God. I think there's no other thing we can do but keep encouraging, keep presenting, keep reaching out to our society to say, discover the beauty, the reality of God, because that's the source of life, that's the source of happiness. I don't think we can do anything else other than call people to faith, call people to come to know God. And the way we do that in particular, of course, is by presenting Christ to people, because he is the incarnation of God. He's the revelation of the nature of God. His teachings provide us with a pattern for how we should live. And of course, it's in him, in his death and resurrection, that we've been saved. So in the end, our fundamental proclamation needs to be Jesus Christ. Yes. And encouraging people to, one way or another, to discover him, to meet him, to encounter him. That can affect a transformation, really, of their own their own life, their own understanding of the nature of human life, and be on a path through life which ultimately leads to eternity.
Another critical area is, of course, the area of education, and particularly Catholic education is our major concern. You no doubt you have hopes for change. You aspire to change. What are some of the areas in which you think change is necessary?
I think in the end, education needs not just to present say, Catholic values or present some ethical views. I think they're obviously important. I think Catholic education has done a lot of good work, particularly in the promotion of social justice, of encouraging young people to have a sense of concern for the needy and the poor, and for the well-being of our environment and so forth. I think all these things are very good, of course, but that's not the fundamental task of Christianity or of teaching in our schools. Our schools do need to do the same things that I've been speaking about. Our schools, our Catholic schools, need to be places where young people encounter Christ.
Yes.
Where through the presentation of the faith, the beauty of the faith, the richness of our tradition, presenting young people with images of the great saints, of the whole rich Catholic view of life. If they can receive that effectively in the schools, but also be given chances of responding personally to faith, then our schools, I think, can be wonderful agents to regenerate Catholic faith and to help young people come to want to live and embrace a Catholic way of life.
You no doubt have a bucket list of the things you would like to see the Plenary Council achieve. What would be at the top of your bucket list? What is the most essential thing in your view that the Council can deal with?
I really hope the plenary will recognise that at this moment in history, in what is going on in our culture, in our society, that the Church needs to reorient itself, if you like, quite singularly and with great purpose and long-term dedication to presenting the person of Jesus Christ. I don't think we can do anything else. All the other things will flow from that fundamental presentation. I think we do need to have a missionary orientation of the Church. We can't, in the face of challenges in our society, it's not the time to circle the wagons or to sort of move into some kind of Catholic ghetto. That's not the answer. We have to engage with society. We have to be a church that reaches out. We have to be a church that engages. We have to bring the richness and beauty of our faith, as well as to our understanding of the nature of human life, and of course continue our great and wide range of charitable activities for the poor, the sick, the needy. We need to do all those things, and those things we do well.
Yes.
But I think fundamentally we have to develop a stronger missionary orientation to help people discover what is at the heart of the Catholic faith, and that is the person of Jesus Christ.
Your Grace, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk to you and to put these questions to you. And I wish you success with the book itself. I hope it attracts the readership it deserves to attract. And above all, I wish you success and fulfilment in the Plenary Council.
Thank you very much, David.